Here I am here. Welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33 WHPR, Comcast 91 in Detroit, and all over the world, courtesy of the World Wide Web. We may be having a little issue with our internet this morning, but not with our television. And of course, I'm here on Facebook Live. But before I start, I'd like to send my condolences out to Marcia Battle Philpott. Her husband passed away this yesterday or early this morning. I'm not sure. It might have been last night. Very, very nice man, made beautiful staffs, just an artist to his heart. And I'd like to extend my sincerest condolences from us here at WHPR. But first, also we have Table Talk today, and we're going to be talking about Joe Jackson and some other things. But first and foremost, I'd like to introduce my guest, Roosevelt Lawrence Jr., and we're going to talk about blacks that wore the blue. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Perryman.
Oh, Brenda, golly. Miss Perryman's my nickname. Anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
Blacks that wore the blue, and we're talking about police officers in the Detroit Police Department, right?
That's correct.
Well, let's get a little of your history first. Now, make sure to speak up and speak it out.
Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure.
I give all praise and honor to my Lord and Savior,
Absolutely,
Jesus Christ. I have
absolutely.
to get that out there. About myself, my parents came from Pine Bluff, Arkansas in the early 50s, and we moved to Inkster, Michigan, then to Detroit. At about
What street did you live on in Inkster?
Hanover Drive in
Oh.
Inkster.
I don't know what.
Yes, ma'am.
I lived there once.
Yes, my dad had an opportunity to get a job at Fleetwood Cadillacs, so we moved to Detroit. I grew up on the east side, Belvedere and Gratiot.
Was that on Clark Street where he worked?
It was Clark in Michigan.
Yeah, my brother worked there.
Actually, I worked there as well. I have 7 brothers, and the top 3 of us had to work there. It didn't work out for us like it worked out for our dad, and I just praise my dad for being the kind of soldier and hard worker that he was. Belvedere and Gratiot, East Side, went to high school at Cass Tech.
Another technician.
Yes, ma'am. And then down the road, joined the Detroit Police Department. But by the way I got there was, if I can tell the story,
Yes.
At about age 9, on a Friday, I'll never forget it, my dad and my uncle, Sam Newman, and another gentleman, we had a very diverse block, Belvedere and Gratiot. We had Italians, we had blacks, we had southern whites. It was a melting pot. But the police drove up and stopped in front of our house. We children were playing. They pointed at my dad and said, "Hey, you, come here." So my dad, saying, "Excuse me, me?" Says, "Yeah, you. I don't want to tell you a second time." He basically
What year was this? What year was this?
This was, I'm going to say, 1961. 1961 in Detroit. My dad went to the police car. Of course, his children and some of my cousins, other children in the neighborhood, was frightful as to what was going to happen next. We chastised my dad and my uncle and my dad's friend for sitting on his porch after working 10 hours that day, drinking a beer. It was pretty much harmless, but he pointed his finger at my dad, and he threatened if he came back around. And I heard that cliche later in the police department, that what he was going to do. Well, at age about 9 years old, I couldn't stand it. I told myself, I'm going to be a police officer when I grow up, and I'm not going to treat people like this man is treating my dad. And ironically, I met that gentleman after I became a police officer.
Really?
Yes, he had flaming red hair then, and when I met him later, his hair wasn't flaming red, but it was him. And I walked up to him, I introduced myself to him at traffic court. I said, "You know what, you're one of the reasons I joined the Detroit Police Department." "Oh, yeah, well, we needed people from Detroit." I said, "No, not so much that, because you disrespected my dad in front of me and my brothers and other neighborhood children, and I never forgot that. So thank you for having me step up and I'm going to be a very good police officer for all the people here in the city of Detroit.
Wow. And you did become a police
I did.
officer.
I did.
In what year?
1974, I was entered into the police department that first year under Mayor Coleman Young. We had a trainee program that put us in a program for a year to do administrative related work. 1975, I was sworn in, and I served 31 years with Detroit.
Wow, amazing. I know you've seen a lot.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll say as much bad, it was probably more good because I surrounded myself with people and I latched on to mentors in the police department and then other community organizations, as we talked about in the book, Hood Research and a few other groups. And it was a wonderful career.
Wow. You know, blacks have been in the police department as far back as the 20s.
Well, actually,
One or two. You know,
yes,
there were.
one or two. Actually, before that, the Detroit Police Department got officially chartered in the late 1800s.
Right.
The first officer in history, which is important, it kind of gave three or four different names as to who was the first black police officer. But at some point in the late 60s, a black male was hired into the Detroit Police Department. And then years after that, more started coming into the department. But the first two or three, they didn't last too long. And a lot of it had to do with treatment
Right.
by fellow officers at the training academies and things like that. So the city of Detroit, again, back in the late 1800s and early 20s, literally went down south and recruited men, primarily white men,
That's what I was going to ask.
yes, to come and patrol the
Wow.
streets in Detroit.
Why would they do that that particular culture? Was that to put the foot on the neck of the black community or what?
I'm going to say that was one of the main reasons. They also had a temperament on how to treat blacks. From my research and from those who I've talked to generations later that their parents and grandparents shared with them.
Can we, just a quickie, I think we have your brother on the line, Jerry. Jerry.
Jerry.
Uh-huh. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Hey.
You're sounding good.
I'm wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great.
Jerry.
Hey, Rose.
Brother
I just
number
wanted to call and support your effort and with Miss Perryman. She's a wonderful person and it's just huge in our community and all she's done. And so I wanted to call and support your effort and to also say that through your, being my brother and all the years you spent in law enforcement, met a lot of awesome African-American law enforcement men and women. And the new chief down in Dallas from Detroit. And so just wanted to say congratulations on your effort on being an author and bringing this wonderful history about blacks and blue to the public.
Let me say before you go, Jerry, hey, man, I love you, man, and you know that. And my brother right now is being challenged a bit health-wise. But
And you've been in my prayers, Jerry.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Brenda.
I actually am wearing his pen that I wear as often as I can, keeping it on the positive tip, and that's what he is doing. And so radio and TV, we got some things going on behalf of Jerry, and Jerry's really spearheading it, although he is being challenged medically. What a soldier. And so just need to get that out.
And when you first contacted me, I said anything that we can do here
Yes,
for Jerry or announcing anything,
that's right.
just let me know.
Well, really appreciate all that, and it is always on a positive tip.
That's right.
Life can be tricky, but you got to keep moving. Got to keep, like I said with Shawshank Redemption, the movie. At the end of the movie, it says, "Get to living or get to dying," and it's about living and celebrating life every day.
Thank
So
you.
I just gave Miss Perryman my pen, so I need another pen, brother.
You got it. You got it. You got it. Well, I'll reach out, Miss Perryman. We do have an event coming up in August.
Please reach out.
We're,
And I would love for you to come, both of you, to come on the show to talk about it.
okay,
Yes.
that'd be wonderful.
We just got to set the date.
You got it.
All right, brother. Love you.
All right.
Love you,
Have
Jerry.
a great one. Thank you, Miss Perryman.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, he's keeping up the good fight.
He's keeping up the good fight, and I'm telling you, he's got some prayer warriors that has surrounded him, and I just can't say enough. He and I are fraternity brothers as well as biological brothers.
What friend?
There's only one fraternity. That's Omega Psi Phi.
Oh, Lord.
Incorporated.
Oh, Lord.
Root to the
Oh, Lord.
bros.
Michelle's, my producer's husband's Q.
Okay.
I know some great Qs.
Rue, to the bros. And so just, not to digress too much, but just that's my man, and our family. We have a huge family, 8 men, 2 sisters. We call ourselves affectionately the Lawrence men, and so we love you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. So, wow, that was great.
Okay,
that was
yes.
really great.
That
and I'm
was.
keeping on the positive tip,
That's
too,
right.
all day, all the time. So, anyway, you said that they had hired people from the South to come up here to join the police department.
Yes. Some of those men, and of course there wasn't very many women, if at all, during those times, in the early 20s. They weren't very smart. They were rather illiterate, where they really couldn't write well. When they got their pay, they put an X next to it. When there were qualified, educated, primarily black men ready to go, they just didn't get the opportunity until there was a newspaper called the Plain Dealer. Back in the 20s, it's kind of aligned to black newspapers across America now. They
Right.
fought on behalf of 2 or 3 African American men who eventually were hired by the Detroit Police Department.
Right. I was going to, you know what I just thought about, and maybe you don't know this, but remember Dr. Ossian Sweet
Yes.
and the Sweet trial and all this?
Absolutely.
Well, the particular evening, that evening in September, Dr. Sweet had brought guns into the house. He had
Yes.
friends there, and he had his 2 brothers. He had friends. One of them was with the police department.
Okay.
He was a black narcotics officer.
Okay.
And, white people had surrounded the house because they moved into this white neighborhood on Garland Street, 2905 Garland Street.
My Lord.
Yes, and so whites had surrounded it, and they started throwing rocks. Well, one of the brothers had a shot outside of the house because Sweet had brought the guns in to protect the family.
Yes.
It was just his wife, and baby daughter had moved in there. Well, the daughter wasn't there that evening, but the brother shot out and killed one of the white men who was throwing rocks. Leon Briner was his name. The point I'm trying to make about telling this is the fact that they were all arrested.
Yes.
See, the police department or the policemen stood around and watched these people stone the house.
Yes, ma'am.
But when a person was shot, then they come
Sure.
and gathered them, took them to jail. That narcotics officer, that was the officer who tried to get out of it. In fact, he kind of lied, trying to get out of having going to jail because they sent him to jail too.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And so everybody, he was on trial with the rest of the people in the house. See, they put all of them on trial. If one was found guilty, the entire group was found guilty. The judge was Judge Frank Murphy.
Mm.
And the first trial ended in a hung jury. In the second trial, they were acquitted.
Well, so that what a story, and I'm sure a real life story, and probably other
But that
stories
got
like
me
that.
how the officer, he was trying to get out of it. Yeah.
Well, yes, but he was probably there trying to do a good deed to that family, and so again, there was other stories where men and women of color from this community and from Windsor, uh, some came over from Windsor to in fact become Detroit police officers in the early 20s and 30s,
Wow.
and so they were hired, and after they got hired, Miss Perryman, the first woman, Grace Murphy, in 1921, was the
Wow.
first African American woman hired as a Detroit police officer, along with two others. But Miss Murphy said, you know what, I'm not taking this inhumane treatment from these men on the police department with names and just total disrespect. She resigned. She became a lawyer, and she worked for the state of Michigan as a lawyer until she retired. And so when I learned that story and talked to a great granddaughter of hers, I just love hearing that story of how strong-willed uh, our people were then and now.
Now, when more blacks got on the police department, what was the reception from the white officers?
Well, it was poor. It was poor again. In 1920, they hired a handful of African Americans, maybe less than 1%. In 1930, and in the book, I don't even talk about Chapter 3, 1930, because I was so disgusted at how little they recruited and hired blacks in the Detroit Police Department. It didn't go up until the late 30s, 40s, where the percentage numbers went up. And then, during that time, the first African American police officer, uh, Reed Howard, was killed in the line of duty in 1931. And what they would do with black officers, who all, for the most part, walked beats,
Were they relegated to the black neighborhoods
they were
only?
relegated primarily to the black neighborhoods. They walked beats because there was no integration of the scout cars until into the 60s.
Wow.
And so Reed Howard, again, a beat officer, they would go to a precinct and say, we need you to infiltrate a blind pig, primarily on the west side, because black officers didn't work on the west side.
Oh,
And
really?
during that undercover assignment, a fight broke out in the blind pig, and he was shot and killed.
So he was like undercover?
He was undercover. If you can picture going to a party, going in and doing those days prohibition with the illegal alcohol, those kind of things. He was there to identify the players, the owners,
Right.
and then the white officers, those crew members of his, was come in, make the arrest, and go to court. His job was done. They'll send him back to his east side precinct walking a beat. And that
Well-
happened repeatedly.
Well, in 1943, didn't they have a riot? And were black police officers engaged?
Yes, in 43, of course, we had a few more African American police officers to the extent that they would get together in fellowship. And this action you're talking about happened near the Belle Isle Bridge.
Right.
And the rumor had it that a black man had thrown a woman's baby into the Detroit River. So, of course, blacks headed that way. Whites primarily are the ones that used Belle Isle during that day. And after a few hours of going backwards and forward, it escalated to the level of a riot. And there was two or three African American police officers who went there to try to curb some of the activity and ask people to stand down. They were later charged, but not convicted for their actions that night.
Oh, okay. Well, I remember police officers, of course, when I was little, here in Detroit and Some of them were at the, would be around the school, not around the schools like they are now, but you knew who the police
Yes, ma'am.
officers were. And I had never really, for a long time, as a child, I never saw black police officers. I lived on the west side.
Okay. Well, and because black police officers didn't work on the west side. As a rule, they worked east of Woodward. And so in those
Wow.
days, if you can picture seeing police officers that walk beats on Oakland Street, and East Grand Boulevard, and then of course areas like Paradise Valley,
Right.
and affectionately the Black Bottom.
Well, it's
That's where
funny.
officers were.
Unless you lived over there, you didn't know, as a
That's right.
child, you didn't even know that that existed.
Yes,
But I remember the Big Four.
yes,
They were white. But let me just kind of go back because when I talk about when I was a little girl, sometimes my father would raise some cane. And the
Okay.
police came to the house, and there were always two white officers.
yes, ma'am.
And they were very civilized, saying, "Oh, Mr. Louis, you got to calm down," all
Sure.
that kind of stuff. So, but I had never seen a black officer.
Right. Well, and let me say this. This is not my intent for the book was not to indict
Right.
white officers.
I didn't think, no,
Right.
I didn't get that
I was
from it.
being relatively civil compared to what I really know firsthand. And so I had friends in the police department that were white, male and female, and I still have some of those friends today. Uh, on the other hand, I had some blacks that had the opportunity that so many others didn't have, and once they get into the police department, use it for their own intent purposes, and kind of disgrace the badge to a degree. And we the citizens of Detroit, we deserve better than that, and so
Absolutely.
they had to leave.
You know, as a young person, I heard about Ben. I thought it was Turpin, but it's Troopin. What
It is Ben Turpin,
Turpin?
Benjamin Turpin.
Yeah, I would hear that name.
Benjamin Turpin's story was pretty profound. He literally was sent to the east side to control people.
That's what I heard.
He was somewhat of a one-man police department. He wore pearl-handled guns. Very seldom did he wear a uniform, and he raised a bunch of cane on the city's east side, where predominantly black men and women that were business owners, educators, where they live. But of course, in a lot of communities, you're gonna have the one or two that's causing havoc that will disrupt a community, and he was really there for them. He sometimes crossed the line because he was a huge man and actually didn't take no stuff. But on the other side of Ben Turpin, he took care of children. And see, that's the side that a lot of people don't know. He helped the Shriners. He set up baseball teams. The overall history about Ben Turpin, that he was a bully and a thug. And in a lot of cases, Miss Perryman, he was. But at the end of the day, he died alone. He actually got into a shootout with a
Wow.
mafia figure.
Wow,
Yes, and because the mafia figures ran
they
through,
were big here.
Yes, they were.
The
Ran
Purple
through-
Gang.
ran through the Paradise Valley and in the bottom, and shook people for businesses for money.
I didn't
And-
realize that.
Yes, ma'am. And Ben Turpin didn't like that. He confronted a guy. They literally got into a shootout. Ben Turpin shot and killed the man, but the city of Detroit charged Ben Turpin. He went to
Really?
court and was found not guilty, but his credibility, his lessened quite a bit, to the extent that he got sick, uh, uh, retired from the police department, lived alone until he died. And he died alone. No one from the Detroit Police Department, City of Detroit, came to his funeral.
Really?
Yes. And so, on one hand, they used that man for their good, to control people. But at the end of the day, he saw that. He did do some good things in the community, but as a rule, hated by those that lived in those communities.
Mm. Wow, amazing. And you have so many officers, there are tales of them. How did you do your research?
Well, Ms. Perryman, again, it's probably over the span of about 15 years. I started it, I put it down, assisting with raising children, job assignments, going to college. So over a period of 15 years, I might have talked to 300 people, retired law enforcement, active, their families, and it just started coming together. And I got a tap on the shoulder from God that says, "Dude, you need to go ahead and get finished with this book." And with the help of so many people, we got it done. It's not a masterpiece. It's my first book. There's a second one being planned, and I'm just glad that you're giving me this opportunity to talk
Oh,
about it.
everybody, if you wonder about police officers, especially those who were African American, both living and living and yeah, dead, because you have retired officers in here
Yes.
also, and you have some who have passed, and you have pictures
Yes.
of the officers also. But this is something to really read about because their stories are amazing of bravery, and like you said, it's positive, and there's some negatives too.
Yes, ma'am. Because we're talking history. This
Right.
really is a history book. It's a good size of history, and then some real life bad side of history. And it was important to talk about both sides of history in this book.
Now, did you feel any discrimination during your career?
Well, again, I came on in the '70s. The Honorable Mayor
Coleman.
Alexander Young was here.
Coleman.
He made it clear to the leadership of the police department we were going to get people of color in the police department and women. Now, at one time in the '80s, the Detroit Police Department had the largest percentage of women than any other police department in the country at that time.
No stuff.
Yes, so women were coming in. They deserved to come in. The first class of predominantly women was in 1974, and they sent them to both the 12th West Side Precinct and the 7th Precinct on the
Well,
East Side.
well, tell me this: when women came into the police department, I mean, throughout your history, were they assigned to a beat or were they assigned to a desk? Or did they give women the same types of jobs that they gave the men?
No, flat out no. In the early days, again, like with Grace Murphy and others coming behind her, they were assigned to the women's division, and they primarily
Dealt with women,
dealt with women and children.
offenders?
Yes, but at some point, 1972, 73, women started joining in numbers, and they then did all the jobs as a rule that the men were doing. Working patrol was the primary job, working in a scout car in uniform. And then they did branch out to areas like sex crimes and some of the other criminal investigation units where they did excellent work. Good writers, good investigators, some of the best.
Right.
And
I can imagine that.
very, very proud of them. Women had to have more education coming in
Really?
the police department when they came on
You know,
than men.
that's not right.
So, but
But
they did their job and they continue to do their job.
Wow. This is an interesting book. This is great. Where can we buy it?
Okay, so Amazon, of course, you can go to the Amazon.com, pick this book up. I have had the opportunity to have one book signing, another one planned for late July. Mary and Cersei, all about women's health boutique in Farmington, retired lieutenant who, her and her partner, opened up a business dedicated to women and their health concerns.
Yeah, on Grand River.
On Grand River in
They've
Farmington.
been on the show. They
Okay.
know. In fact, her partner,
Kelly?
Kelly.
Yeah.
Her son and my grandson are best friends.
Okay.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah.
Detroit is so small.
I just have to shout out Marion and Kelly
Hey.
because I love and respect you both. And Danny Cersei.
Right.
Marion Cersei and Danny Cersei were lieutenants, his short story,
Oh.
when I got sent to the 10th precinct, Livernois and Elmhurst, as a punishment from a black command officer because I had a tendency to speak my mind and dealt with other officers that wanted to do quality of life policing and because we wanted to do it for everybody, but for sure us, unfortunately, African Americans for a long time, you know, whites looked out for whites, Italian looked out for
Right.
Italians. It was about time
Well,
that we as black officers
sometimes
looked out for ourselves.
sometimes blacks, when they become bosses, are harder on the black people than they are on other
Yes, ma'am.
people.
And-
Some people do that.
Yeah, and I get that. But when I get to the 10th precinct, Mary and Cersei, Danny Cersei as lieutenants, really looked out for me and taught me how to be a street
Well,
supervisor.
Tell her we gave her a shout out.
I will.
So Amazon.com.
Amazon.com and I have a website, email. I'm sorry, that if I can, I'd like
Yes.
to give it. It is btwtb1911@gmail.com. Again,
Blacks that wore the blue. BTWTB. That's how you know. Blacks
Right.
that wore the blue. The initials.
yes, 1911@gmail.com.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much. And you're on Facebook anyway, too.
I'm on Facebook, and if you please allow me, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't throw shouts out to my family, two mentors, actually three, that really took me under their wings when I became a young police officer. Moses Baldwin, who's a retired police officer from Detroit, retired Detective Sergeant Alexander Harris, who we celebrated his 102 birthday
Oh,
a
glory.
few months ago.
Glory.
And Mary Jared Jackson, who was the first African American deputy chief in the Detroit Police Department, in the history of the Detroit Police Department. I salute you and I love you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much. I'll be back in just a moment with Sydney Johnson. You say, who is Sydney Johnson? You'll know after you meet her. I am back. I am back. I'm back with Sydney Johnson, and you may ask, who is Sydney Johnson? Those of you on Facebook Live have seen her little face, but she is our intern, and she is a wonderful, wonderful young lady who attends a historically black college and university, really. And I wanted to get some of her views this morning on what's happening, but let's hear a little about her. How are you?
I'm good. I'm blessed, actually. It's a great morning. But how are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Listen, you graduated from
Lake Orion?
Lake Orion High
High
School,
School.
and what made you decide to go to a historically black college?
Well, for starters, Lake Orion, is like a predominantly white high school. And so I kind of wanted to be around more people like me and to grow up and to know more things about my history or like black history in general. And also my aunt, shout out my auntie and my cousin are both Howard alumni and they stay close to the area. So I heard it was a great school. And because I actually applied to all HBCUs. I applied to Spelman and got in as well as FAMU and Clark, but Howard was my first choice.
Oh, good for you. Was it easy for you to find housing?
Oh, yeah. I know a lot of people have troubles with that, but it was your first year, it's guaranteed. So, and I'm blessed to say that my roommate, who I actually found housing with, we're best friends now.
Oh, good. Where is she from?
North Carolina.
Oh,
Shout out Alexis.
shout out to Alexis. Oh, wow. So, what do you like about Howard?
Wow.
because
There's a lot.
it's a very famous
Right.
historically black college.
There's a lot of things. I think my favorite thing about Howard is how it is all black people, but it's like they're all different. Like it's people from the Caribbeans, from literally everywhere, from the states, people from not the states, and I just like how the culture is so diversified and how you get so much of everything. Like during our in the calf, we have soul food Thursdays. We'll have a
Oh, in the
Caribbean
cafeteria.
in the
She said
calf.
in the calf. We did.
In the calf, we have soul food Thursdays. We have Caribbean Monday. Like we get a taste of everything, and I think it's like so unique that we get to experience all
Now
that.
tell me this. Well, I remember when I went to Eastern Michigan, but the food was so bad. How is the food at a historically black college such as Howard?
Well, I think I think that I like it much more than if I would have attended a PWI. It's good. It's great for what it is. It's not like home cooked meals or anything, but it is definitely I enjoy it.
Right. Now, what is your major?
Well, I'm in communications. I'm undecided between television and film and advertising. But I
You could
think
probably do it all.
that's what I think because they're all somewhat related.
Connected, right.
Yeah.
They are. They are generally related. And you being in Washington at this time, this is a turbulent time.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in DC at the moment. I know we stay in more of like because Howard is located in the Northwest and there's like a
Yes.
Southwest, Southeast, and all that. So like where I'm located at, I'm not so much in the mix of everything,
Right.
but I definitely am the first to hear about it.
Right. Well, tell me this. Do you all get great speakers there?
We do actually for the commencement ceremony up at Howard. We just had chat.
Yeah,
Wakanda forever.
yes.
We just had
Chadwick
chat.
Boseman, who played T'Challa in
Black Panther.
Black Panther, he was the commencement speaker.
Right, I was really hoping I would still be in DC for that, but I left. It was my time to go, so I missed it. But we do, and we have like Howard alum just walk on like campus at any time. Like
Such as?
Anthony Anderson, he was on there. I'm pretty sure Taraji came up as well.
Yeah, Taraji P. Henson went to Howard.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember. There's a lot of them, and then there's even like who people who go there who are related to or like
Right.
have.
Well, there's such a legacy, and someone we lost last August was Dr. Robert E. L. Perkins. He was an oral surgeon here in Detroit for many years. He made history here, and he did so much for young people who were going to Howard. You know, he's a part of the Howard Alumni Association. I just want to give the late Dr. Perkins a shout out. He was a mentor of mine, and I mean, he loved Howard.
That-
Loved Howard.
Once you go to Howard, you're Howard forever. Literally, I want to be back up there now. I don't even know why I came home this summer.
Well, I know. Well, Victoria Reese, she's a former student. She's in California. She went to Howard. I have a lot of students who went to Howard, and she's doing a lot of great things. And I think that you're going to get a good experience. Clifton Ross III, he was leading the Howard Black Choir.
Oh,
I don't know if he's still leading it or not, but he's been on BET and a number of shows. He also went to Southfield when I taught there. But Howard just is a great school. But is there any political activism going on there?
Wow, a lot. We actually, the A building, which is the financial aid building, we literally just had it like ambushed. Students stayed in there for, I think, a week, maybe more,
Why?
9 days. Because of the financial aid situation, everything that happened with people were stealing money from financial aid, we weren't
Oh,
getting our demands met. Like,
Oh.
there was a list of, I think, 9 demands that were trying to get met, and almost all of them were made.
Oh, that's great. Well, activism is important. And I know it starts right on campus because I know mine started with food committee because it was about the food in the dorm. So we formed a committee to protest the food, but then it goes out and we got more politically active because it was in the 60s and everything it was going on in the
Right.
60s.
Right.
What I was going to, I got the opportunity to speak at Blackburn Center twice.
I love
Here,
Blackburn.
yeah.
That's the calf. That's
I also, when I was 19, I was pledging AKA, and I went over there as an Ivy. But then
Okay.
I got scared to tell people I was pledging because I heard that was Alpha chapter, and
No, they're
they're
serious.
they're real
They're
serious, and
serious.
I was silly, so I didn't even tell them. But what do you think about what's going on with the migrant children right now?
I think that's just literally it breaks my heart. I feel like at such young age, I can't even imagine being like torn away from my parents. Better yet, like even the age I'm at now, like I feel like my mom is such a important part of my life.
She's very strong. She's a talented. I've known her since she was that little. Now she's just a little taller than that, but she
Oh,
just,
sure.
I know, she's a wonderful, wonderful woman, and your dad was a wonderful young man, and he used to be in our neighborhood all the time, and my kids grew up with him. But, I mean, is there any political activism on campus about any of the things that are going on? Um, because the president is Donald Trump. And I don't know if anybody, I mean, you're in the communications
Right.
category, but, I'm sure you might even take a journalism
Oh, yeah.
class
Yeah, you
at
were
one point,
required to.
or do some newscasting and so
Right.
forth. Now, have you had any classes in communication?
Yes, I've taken like majority of the basic classes like math, English, but I've also taken um classes like about in the field. I'm trying to think of the name of the class. Ethics and communication. I've taken that class. It's basically just how to be ethical in the communication field, like what's right from wrong.
Right, right, right. Well, right now things are kind of skewed because they're different. You probably don't watch the news channels. I watch the news channels, and Fox News is dedicated to the president, making him look good even when he lies every day,
That's
several
not what Howard's
times a
trying to
day.
do. That's not what Howard.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
not
right.
at
Oh,
all.
I know they're not. And
Nah.
then there are other stations that are more liberal who are trying to they're trying to let people know that this man lies every day. And I was just wondering, because it's going to hit home with all of us, with
Right.
you at your age, me at my age, because they're trying to roll back legislation
Oh, wow.
it has been part of history, and not only that, part of what Barack Obama, they tried to erase his legacy.
About Howard, I know it's like we have a mural that was just painted in the calf, and it has Barack and all like the black figures who went to Howard, like that made it out. I feel like he's highly celebrated up at school. At Howard, you will not find one person who supports the ideas of Donald Trump or what he stands for.
Well, would you ever pick up a sign?
Definitely, I will protest. I will protest. I didn't for the one in the A building.
Well, you were just a freshman last year.
Yeah, so it's like different, but now that I know the culture, I feel like the more active you are on campus, the better it is. I feel like that's the whole Howard experience, per se.
Yeah, the more active you are. I think you will. You're acclimated. If anybody who's watching, I've been to the campus, and it's not far from Georgetown, though.
Oh, not at
Well,
all. Not at all. They don't have a metro station, but I do take metro close to there, or I'll Uber to go out there.
Right, right. And I like that area.
It's a really nice area.
Now, have you had the opportunity to go to the African American Museum?
I've been 3 times since I've been in DC.
Wow. It takes a lot, though, to see the whole thing, doesn't it?
It does. At one point, we got there when it first opened and stayed till closing. And at one point, I was just like, "All right, I'm ready to go home. My feet hurt." Like, it's
It
a
is
really
that big? I
It's
see. I haven't
big.
been there, so tell us about it.
It really it's It's so much. Like, it starts back from, like, way back in slavery up until, like, now there's, like, a mural of Barack Obama. Like, it pretty much showcases, like, all black accomplishments, all black history, and, like, the history, like, the truth about the history. I think one of the saddest things in there is the Emmett Till display. That's the most.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that one made me tear up. It did. There's a lot. My favorite part, I think, they're on the top floor. I want to say there's like a music exhibit where you can see music from like rock and roll all the way back to like hip hop now, and you can play. There's a place where you can play any type of music you want, and it's great. I like it a lot. I'll probably go back when I. Go
Well,
back to
you've
DC.
been 3 times already.
times.
Did you see something new every time?
Yeah, well, I know the first time when I was tired, I was just kind of glancing over things. But when I went back, I kind of more like paid attention and read. Because when I went before, I was like, oh, that's cool. All right, you ready? Like, because it's so much to see. Like, it's an all-day trip for sure. You can't just go in for an hour and think you're gonna see everything.
Right,
Because
I can imagine.
not.
It's several floors. How many floors?
I want to say like 4, honestly, but they all have like different. The floors have so much on
Right.
them.
We have a call this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Brenda.
Who am I speaking with?
Thomas.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Okay. I had to call in when your guest mentioned the African Museum in Washington,
Uh-huh.
and she said the window or timeline starts at slavery all the way up to now, right?
Yes.
I'm disappointed with those kind of historical museums that only take a look at our experience from slavery up to now. What happened before slavery has to be mentioned. I mean, that's when we were at our greatest. And for these institutions only to talk about this little window is, I think, disrespectful. But when I'm there, I'll take a look at it. Maybe I'll leave a note in the suggestion box.
Yeah, because when they say the name of the museum is the
The
Museum,
Smithsonian African American Art Museum.
the
Yeah.
Smithsonian African American Art Museum, and I'm sure that they deal somewhat with history, with
I
how
hope
the
so.
slaves got here.
There's a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I might have missed a lot of it, but I do. What from I remember, I started, I think, around that, and then it came up to here. But there are definitely some points they highlighted before that I may have missed personally because there's just so much to see.
Yeah,
But
yeah, so much to see. An African American, you know,
Yeah.
it's
I
African.
understand that museum is going to display some situations regarding the movie Black Panther.
oh wow.
They're going to have some kind of display with pictures or whatever.
Okay.
That's
Essentially, yeah.
awesome.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for
Thank you.
calling
Bye-bye.
in. Bye-bye. Watch Table Talk, though. Wow, this is amazing. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Wow, 5 years. Okay, let's see. I graduate in 2021.
Golly.
Yeah, that's crazy. How many years is that from now? That's like 3. 5, I kind of want to just be started. I'm not going to be, deep in my field yet. I want to have, like, opportunities as soon as I leave I might even do extra years there depending on.
What your, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have several former students who are actually newscasters
Oh, wow.
now, and one's in New Orleans. But I do have a young friend. I work with her in acting. She's one of the top newscasters, Leslie Foster. She's in the Washington. She's gorgeous. She's one of the anchor women
Oh, wow.
there. Yeah, she used to dance with Detroit Windsor Dance Company as a little girl,
Right.
and now she's like big time over there.
That's
But
awesome.
approach those people about shadowing them. I mean,
No, I think Howard too. They're really known for like their alumni and their connections to
Yes.
get to places. Like I wear a Howard shirt anywhere, and someone be like, "Oh, you go to Howard?" Like, you take my number. Like, people are so willing to help you
Right.
because you go to Howard.
well, I wish you the best, and
Thank you.
watch out for her. She's going to be doing an interview on one of the segments later on this summer. So watch out for her. I'm trying to give her as much experience as we can over here at WHPR. And I thank you so much. You do so well.
Thank you so much. for
My
having me.
pleasure, my pleasure. Well, stay tuned, everybody, for Table Talk. We'll be back in just a moment. Thank you.